The commercial real estate sector is going to get decimated, as too will retail, because people aren't shopping. They're not going to be able to afford to shop because the dollar is going to lose so much value. Going to Walmart, it'll be like going, to Saks Fifth Avenue. People aren't going to be able to afford to go shop there anymore. But to the extent that people do shop, they're buying stuff on Amazon or other, online retailers. They're not going to malls and shopping centers. And all of these places are in tremendous trouble, and so are the banks that loan money to the owners of these properties, because they're going to default. So this is a tremendous crisis that's coming. The real estate that will gain the most value will be like farmland, or land where you have natural resources that you can harvest or grow, and maybe land out in the suburbs, as a lot of people are fleeing these crime-infested, overtaxed cities where they no longer have to work because they can work from home. So you could see a dichotomy between real estate in the inner city and real estate out in the country or the suburbs, where more people are going to be fleeing to as opposed to fleeing from. The markets are in kind of the eye of a hurricane here, and I think you're going to see an explosive up move in gold and silver any day. What surprises me is every day that goes by that it doesn't happen. But it will happen, because the way the markets are looking at inflation right now in the Fed, the markets still believe that the Fed will be successful in its inflation fight, and that this big uptick in inflation will in fact end up being transitory. It's just a longer transition than they may have first thought, but the markets still believe that inflation is going to stay around 2% or lower over the next 30 years. And you can see that by looking at yields on 30-year bonds. You can look at the spread between Treasury inflation-protected bonds and regular Treasuries, that the markets still expect low inflation over the next 30 years, despite these massive deficits. And they believe the Fed can continue to print all this money, do all this quantitative easing, that the balance sheet can grow forever, and none of that is ever going to translate into higher inflation. And I think that's pie-in-the-sky nonsense, and I think soon the markets are going to have to come to grips with reality that the Fed is going to lose the inflation fight. It may not even really have the fight. It may just be bluffing, but ultimately not even have the guts to get in the ring with inflation based on the political sacrifices that would be made short term for the economy and for employment and for the federal budget deficit. Because if the Fed fights inflation, the U.S. government is going to be forced to dramatically cut government spending, including spending on Social Security, Medicare, and things like that. And so to spare politicians from having to make those tough choices, it's likely that the Fed never follows through with this, and we go back to QE, and the Fed starts cutting rates again, even as inflation remains high. But when the markets realize that the inflation is not going away, and even if we have a recession, inflation is not going away, a lot of people think, well, if the Fed doesn't win the fight against inflation, recession will, because the Fed's going to raise rates high enough to cause a recession, and the recession is going to get rid of inflation. It won't. No. The recession is going to make inflation worse, because in the recession, we're going to have less economic output, but we're going to print even more money. But when the markets come to terms with just how high inflation is going to be, there's going to be a rush into gold and silver like you've never seen. Prices are going to crash up, not down. But what you need to do before the herd is get all the gold and silver that you want now, before that happens. I have a company, or I represent a company, Schiff Gold, that I first founded and I still have something to do with. And we've got the best prices on gold and silver. We don't have people trying to talk you into these collectible coins. You'll get the best prices on bullion, gold and silver, and do it while gold is still below 2,000. Because I think the move from 2,000 to 3,000 is going to happen very quickly, and then the move from 3,000 to 5,000 may happen even quicker than the move from 1 to 2, and the move from 5 to 10, that may happen overnight. So you got to get into real money and get out of fiat currencies as quick as you can. There's a window of opportunity. Have no idea how long it's going to remain open, but just assume it slams shut tomorrow and get your gold and silver today. The Russian natural gas, the Russian oil that they are selling, they're getting a hell of a lot more money for it now than they were before the sanctions. COVID just came along and gave them an excuse they were looking for to blame stuff on, which is what they're now doing with Putin, blaming everything on Putin. But inflation was going to continue even if Russia had never invaded the Ukraine. And then they would have to come up with some other excuse to blame all this stuff on. Problem is, I mean, we can't even afford peace, let alone war. We're in no position to finance a war. In fact, we have to borrow money from our enemies in order to fight them, which makes no sense whatsoever. In fact, our enemies not only would have to finance the war, they'd have to supply us with our material in order to fight the war. So we are in no economic position to have a war.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.